bring in DC's Faithful's champ right now. We're going to talk a little abbreviated Defenders talk. I know we're getting into the segment a little bit late, but that's fine. We'll just do a slightly shorter Wizards segment when we get to that time in the show. But champ, how are you doing tonight?
I'm well. Defenders looking really, really good. They're looking like world beaters so far this season, but there's still 6 more games to go. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm just making sure that all my logos are up and everything is changed. I also wanted to share something with myself real quick. Hold on. Participants. And where are we? Here we are. So I want to be able to share a couple of things later on in the show. All right, so this game, champ, was a very exciting Defenders game. The Defenders started off really hot, and then they kind of fell off a little bit in the second quarter. And then they almost got themselves into hot water with a touchdown late at the end of the first half, but it was called back in a 5-second runoff. What are some of your thoughts on the first half in this game?
The first half, I want to tell you the ironic thing. We played Vegas twice, and both games were marred by rain and sloppy, slippery conditions, and it really mostly benefited the Defenders more than it did Vegas. Now, the first half was it seemed like it was very, very cautious for the Defenders, but it's clear that they wanted to establish that their offensive identity is to run the ball, right? That was their offensive identity, and that's what they were able to do. They were able to get up first. They were able to get up early, and they were able to stay in the lead.
Can you flick your camera on and off for a second? It's doing the flicker thing again.
I'm not messing with my camera. It just seems like it's only Zoom that it does this.
I know.
It doesn't
I
do it
don't
anywhere
know.
else but Zoom. And I'm like, I don't. And look, it immediately goes to it.
Yeah, it's whenever I talk, which is frustrating. It screws it up. But we may have to just install a new Zoom client on yours because I was reading about a bug. But anyway, it's all good. But yeah.
But I will say, like I said, the first half, clearly, like, you know, they're very familiar with each other, having played already before in Vegas. So it wasn't like they were, you know, they were trying anything that they probably didn't know before, but it just seemed like the Defenders were a lot less sloppy in the first half than they were in that first game against Vegas, where they were very sloppy in that first half and had to basically come from behind. They had a stat on the broadcast that said that the Defenders have always trailed at the half, and yet they were at the point 3-0, whereas Vegas has always been in the lead after 2 quarters, but they had won. So it's funny that ended up happening where it flipped, and the Defenders were leading 14-6 after 2 quarters, and we know what the result was. But this was a much better fourth quarter for the Defenders than it would be for than it was on their first game against Vegas.
Yeah, it's interesting because the Vegas team has been up all 3 of the first games that they played and lost them. And the Defenders have either been tied or down in all the first 3 games and have come back and won. So it's been a tale of 2 very different halves for these 2 teams. But I was happy to see that the Defenders, you know, played a really smart third quarter. And then obviously they seem to let some of these teams like hang around at the very end, but they're able to shut down this 4th and 15 play. If you're new to the XFL, they get 1 shot from their own 25-yard line to try to convert a 4th and 15. If you do, you get to keep the ball. It's very exciting. The Battlehawks are so far the only team to convert on it. But I'm happy to see the last 2 weeks the Defenders were able to sniff it out and able to take advantage of that. Champ, what are some of your thoughts on the second half play?
Well, there was one thing I forgot to mention in the first half, and that was the fact that Vegas, on their very first play, they had the opening possession on their very first play, fumbled the ball, and then Washington with DC with 4 running plays ended up scoring a touchdown, and I think that's what took Vegas's heart. But then when you look at the second half, and the second half was just a different. It was very different for the Defenders. It was a lot of points scored. They even had an interview with the OC in the middle of the game, where he admitted, like, once they started getting up, he did get a little bit more conservative, but it was working because they were scoring points. They were scoring field goals, they were scoring touchdowns, and they even had a very big interception that happened. Granted, the guy did fall down. Poor guy, he slipped and fell, and the DB was able to turn into a receiver and just catch it with ease. I think what marked that play, though, was that the block, they had a low block and they got penalized for that, but it didn't deter them, because they literally on a 4th and 2 got a beautiful rub route, which caused a broken coverage, and homeboy he was so wide open. I could have made that throw, and I'm 40 years old and 230 pounds, and even I could have made that throw. That's how wide open he was, and that basically iced the game for Vegas. There was no coming back after that one. They did try to make it a game, but at that point it was just too little too late. And after making the field goal, they were able to stop Vegas, and that was it. It was a huge win for this team. Huge win.
Yeah, for sure. So next week, we've got a big game against the Battlehawks. And so the Battlehawks are the team is 3-1. They've only lost to us. But Champ, what are some of your thoughts? That they had an incredible showing in their first home game with over 30,000 people, and it's going to be rowdy against us as well.
Let me tell you something. That site, that when they showed that video and I saw that site, I said, yeah, we are definitely going into hostile territory when we head to St. Louis next week, because they haven't seen a live professional football game in years, and they came out ready for it. And I know they're not just going to just come out for the one game and then just say, because the team's playing well. So, and they're going to support the team, especially when they're playing well. So, of course, they're going to be out there in full force. Now, are they a better fan base than our fan base? This may sound biased. I don't care, but no, they're not. Like the DC Defenders fan base is the best fan base. They were out there in the cold rain, still making a beer snake and going crazy. The only thing I didn't like was the throwing of the lemons, though. I didn't like that at all. Anyway, but this game has a lot on it, because these are the top 2 teams in the XFL right now. 2 of the top teams in the XFL right now. They ended their last game very contentiously, to the point 3 players got ejected and suspended. So there's going to be bad blood. They're going to be on their home turf with their home crowd, rowdy as crap, and it's going to be a tough one. But the offense has to establish that identity that they established in this game against Vegas. They're a ground and pound team. They're good at running the ball. They have talented running backs, and they have quarterbacks that are extremely mobile, and they have this great design RPOs and quarterback draws that work very well. So as long as they can stick to that game plan, but do also mix in the pass as well, because those quarterbacks can throw as well, I think that they can remain undefeated and really set themselves apart from the rest of the XFL teams.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's gonna be such a big game. This is kind of like a big time rivalry. There's gonna be on Saturday night at 7:00, I believe.
Yeah, that's prime time.
Yeah, I think it's on FX. I'm just double checking that right now. But yeah, let me just double check that before I say. So this week, there is a game on Thursday between the Roughnecks, who are 4-0 and what many believe to be the number 1 team in the XFL, against the Sea Dragons, a 2-2 team. That game is on ESPN at 10:30 on Thursday. And then on Saturday, the first game is that Defenders versus Battlehawks game. It's a 7:00 start on FX or ESPN Plus if you want to watch it on mobile or on streaming. Again, we're 4-0. We're going into 3-1. And I hope that some of our fans travel, because it sounds like a really cool arena. And we seem to have a pretty loyal fan base. It'll be interesting to see how many people are willing to travel for a team. But it's going to be a tough one for sure. And then after that game is the Guardians versus the Vipers, the battle of the 2 0-4 teams. So you know that that's going to be a dogfight, because no one wants to be 0-5. And both teams have been so close in so many games to wins that they're both like right on that cusp. So that'll be a 10:00 game on FX. And then on Sunday at 9 p.m. on ESPN2, it's a battle for Texas. The Renegades versus, is it the Brahmas? I don't even know.
Yeah, the Brahmas.
The Brahmas, which is a type of cattle, I found out. Anyway, Arlington Renegades, which may as well be called Dallas Renegades, versus it's Houston has a team here. Or no, it's San Antonio, right? It's San Antonio.
Yeah,
Sorry.
San Antonio. Funny fact. The funny irony about that is there's a team in here called the Brahmas. When one of the people who owned this league, The Rock, that was one of his nicknames, was the Brahma Bull. I find that absolutely ironic.
Well, and it's interesting because I believe that they're actually based this whole entire league out of Texas. A lot of people don't realize this, but all of the players fly back to Texas for practice and to live. So they don't actually live in the city that they represent, unlike every other sports team that I know. So I thought that was kind of an interesting fact, that it's not like the DC Defenders, all of them live here or anything. So that must make for some contentious flights if they run into each other at the airports and stuff like that. So I just thought that's kind of an interesting, that the whole league is owned by one company and they're all based in basically one city, down in Texas. But it's been a really exciting first 4 weeks in the league. If people don't realize, is 10 weeks in the regular season. The semifinals is the April 29th to May 6th. In the championship game. So anyway, there'll be one semifinal on Saturday and one on Sunday on the 29th and 30th. And then the championship game is going to be on the 13th of May at 8 p.m. Yeah, it's an exciting kind of. I really enjoyed the XFL so far. I've been watching a lot of their games, and I hope that other people will give them a chance and tune in as well. We're going to bring in the rest of our roundtable, and we're going to switch gears here for some Wizards talk. And welcome in Tim. How are you doing tonight, Tim?
Doing great. How are you guys doing?
We're doing good. Some visual glitches, but we make do. We used to be a web streaming. We'll talk about 7 years ago. People would just call in to a phone number, so it's still easier, I think, in a lot of ways than that.
My God!
Oh yeah, no, it's easier than those days. Yeah, I like Zoom better, so could be worse.
Blog Talk Radio suck.
Yeah, it was bad. But yeah, both Champ and I both had a show on the same network, True Radio Network, which we still represent, and I'm happy that we've moved on to other platforms and Twitch and Zoom and all sorts of different other things. But so we're gonna also bring in Arun here. How you doing tonight, Arun?
Not bad, considering how bad the Wizards week was.
Yeah, we're gonna make this one a pretty quick Wizards talk. We're gonna do it in about 20 minutes, and usually we do it about 40 minutes. So we're gonna do an abbreviated one here. Let me see if I can share my screen real fast. We'll kind of get right into it. Let's see if this works. And I click over here. That button, and then cool. All right, and Champ, if you want to just turn off your camera when you're off air and on, it seems to work when you're talking, so we're gonna try that too. Whatever works. I'm not.
I think after this one, I'm going to uninstall and reinstall Zoom and see what happens next week.
Yeah, I looked it up online. They said that was the fix. There's like the driver gets corrupted or something. So anyway, but I only found that recently. I probably should have told you that yesterday. But anyway, it's fine. We'll have it figured out for next week. And it's like you're calling in with occasional video. All right, so let's go into last week's games. It's starting off with we have 4 games to break down. So we were in the middle of like a ton of games in a very short period of time when we last left off. We had a game on Tuesday, February 28th against the Hawks. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go through all 4 games kind of quickly, and then I'm going to let each one of you guys break down one game that you want to talk about more in depth, and then we'll talk about the week ahead. And same thing, each one of you guys can break down a game that you want to talk about. Just go a little bit faster, and then we can get into some March Madness talk. We are having a special guest, hopefully rating in as well, and we'll talk about more about him when we get to that segment. All right, so the first game is against the Hawks. It was a close game. It was tied at the end of 1. They took a 2-point lead. Or sorry,
they don't have the Pistons game on there. You're looking at the wrong week.
Am I? Hold on.
Yeah. There you go. Pistons.
Oh yeah.
There you go.
Oh yeah. No, I was the wrong. I was the other Hawks game. Yeah. I'm sorry. You're right.
No,
For
I
some
got
reason
you.
it didn't refresh.
You know I got you. You know I got
Okay,
you, brother.
there you go. Right, we did beat the Pistons in a one game kind of road swing that we took. That we were at home for a bunch of games, then we went away, and we won a game that we had to win. So we were up by 3 in the first. Then unfortunately the Pistons came back strong, outscored us in the second. The Wizards outscored the Pistons in the third, and they outscored them just by 1 in the fourth to hold on to a 119-117 victory. A game which a lot of the players in the Wizards thought that we shouldn't have even won. But it was a close game, and it was a game that we had to win for sure. Then the next game was that was the close Hawks game. Oh wait, is that right? Yeah, that's the close Hawks game from this week. The Atlanta Hawks come out to a very early lead, outscored them by 6. And then they come back. The Wizards outscored them, by 9 in the second, and they outscored them by 1 in the third. But unfortunately, they kind of fall apart in the fourth, and they fall 32-26 in that fourth quarter, and fall in the game 122-120. In a close and exciting game, but unfortunately, we kind of needed to win this Friday, mini series, if you want to call it that. And the second game was even worse. The Wizards did take the lead in the first again. The Hawks outscored by 11 in the second, outscored by 4 in the third. And the Wizards made it a little bit of a closer game in the fourth, but still, the Hawks were able to win that game 114-107. So things are kind of going downhill quickly. And in the game that I was pretty convinced we were going to always lose this week against the 76ers, the 76ers came out strong, outscored us by 8 in the first. The Wizards made it a little bit closer in the second, outscored by 3. The 76ers pulled away again, outscored by 7. And then they outscored them by 7 once again in the fourth quarter to pull away with a 112-93 victory. And Champ, I'm going to start with you. Which game do you want to talk about?
Well, I want to talk about the Hawks games because I said on this podcast last week, I said those were the 2 games you absolutely had to win in order to give yourself a chance to at least get into the play-in tournament. And not only did they not win those games, they lost them in very close fashion because of they just did not execute fully where they needed to execute. And that was where the issue lied. They needed to win those 2 games. They needed them because right now they're not. Even if the season were to end today because of a tiebreaker, they're out completely because the Bulls have a better conference record than we do. So we're out completely. So these 2 games were critical for the Wizards to have even a remote chance to make the playoffs. And now that remote chance to make the playoffs is now pretty much almost gone, if not completely gone. And it started with beating the Hawks. At least we knew we were going to beat the Pistons. That was the game that was rescheduled. So we had to play the rescheduled game because they got stuck in Texas. Won that one, but then they just fell apart. And the Hawks games were the ones that they needed to win the most, and they didn't.
Yeah, for sure. Tim, what are some of your thoughts on this week?
Yeah, I'll talk about the second Hawks game the most, just because that was the one that I went to. I just think this Wizards team, I mean, clearly they could have had a much better record if they just held on to leads and finished games. And I think there's something kind of wrong with them in the clutch. They're basically leading her in most games, it seems like, but Bradley Beal and other players at the end just can't kind of hit a big shot. And it just felt like this Wizards game was the same. They were in it most of the game, but they can't hit a big shot. And I just think, maybe it's been injuries, it's been a lot of things, but this team just doesn't seem to have what it takes in the clutch. And I don't know what it is, but they just don't have a great bench. They don't have a lot of depth. And this game was disappointing because they could have had both of these Atlanta games, but they didn't win either. And I just think also the home advantage isn't great. there's always a lot of road fans, so it's just tough. But at least we can talk about the tank situation.
Yeah, for sure. Arun, is there a specific game that you want to talk about?
Yeah, I'll talk about the Pistons game, given that was the only win. Uh, Beal shot 14 of 21 from the field, and he had 32 points. Got to the free throw line 5 times, and then Porzingis actually fouled out of this game. He finished with 24 points, but it came off of a missed Bradley Beal shot. Gafford got a rebound. He was being outplayed by Wiseman, who's the Pistons recently acquired from the Golden State Warriors. He's the number 2 overall pick, or something like that, for the Warriors, and he had a great game against Gafford, and for most of the fourth quarter, Gafford was benched, and then they brought him in just because Porzingis fouled out. He's able to hit a game winner, and the Wizards were able to beat the Pistons. Looked like things were looking up after this win for the Wizards, because even though the Pistons are a bad team, the Wizards were in the middle of the stretch where they're playing 4 games in 5 nights. So I guess the first Hawks loss was more, they were the 4th game of a back-to-back, four games in 5 nights. But overall, just a disappointing stretch. And right now, the Wizards, if the season ended today, they would have the number 7 overall pick. And they could, if they keep losing like the way they are, they could end up with like the 5th or 6th best lottery odds. And maybe they would have like a 14 to 20% chance of landing a top 4 pick. And there's this French guy who's like the next Kevin Durant. He's 7'4", Victor Wembanyama. The Wizards, if they aren't going to compete for a play-in game, this guy's being hyped up as the best player since LeBron James to come out of the draft. So it's not a bad draft for the Wizards to tank. If they were to get the number 1 overall pick, it would probably be a franchise-altering move.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I want to welcome in our Raiders. Surprise raid by Ryan, that E-Flat guy. He's actually going to be joining our call here in just a couple of moments. So we're just looking ahead at the upcoming schedule of the Wizards, and then we're going to switch into some March Madness talk, and Ryan's going to be joining us for that. And I want to thank him for the resub, and I want to thank Andy for the gift sub earlier on in the stream. I appreciate that as well. So I appreciate everyone for tuning in and being a part of it. Ryan, I hope that you had a wonderful music stream leading up to this, and I appreciate you rating in and being a part of this stream, talking March Madness in just a couple of moments with us. We're gonna just finish up our Wizard segment real quick, and then we'll switch gears after that. I'm gonna go through the upcoming week real fast, and then I'm gonna let each one of you guys take a game that you want to talk about. We played the Pistons one more time, this time in Washington tomorrow at 7 p.m. We also on Friday, March 17th, we play at 7:30 against the Cavaliers, and then that game is in Cleveland, and then we play the Kings in Washington on Saturday, and that's an 8 o'clock game. So those are the upcoming 3 games. I'll start off with you, Champ. Which game do you want to talk about?
I want to talk about the Pistons game
Mhm.
because I feel like that's another game that they should win. They should win every game that they have from here on out. They should win, and they gotta win if they want to have any chance of even sniffing the playoffs. And it starts with the Pistons, who they've already were able to beat, even though it took a last-second shot from Daniel Gafford to beat one of the worst teams in the Eastern Conference and in the NBA. This time they're at home. They should absolutely turn up and absolutely run away with this, but I feel like they will not. They will win it, but I feel like it's going to be another nail biter of a game, and it shouldn't be a nail biter because the Pistons, they have a couple of pieces on there, but they're clearly by their record, they're not playing very well, and they should be able to take advantage of that.
Yeah, I hope that they are able to. If they want to make a run for at least even playing in the play-in games, this is a very important game to that effect. All right, Tim, between the Kings game and the Cavaliers game, which game do you want to break down?
I'll break down the Kings game just because I think I think the Wizards will probably lose this game because Sacramento is playing really well this year, and they're likely to make the playoffs and break their streak. Also, I think it's interesting that the game is at 8 o'clock. Probably it's national or something like that. But normally, this is a game that I would say the Wizards would win because Sacramento has been bad for a long time, but not this year. They have a lot of good players. They have Kevin Huerter on the team from University of Maryland, so he's making a little bit of a homecoming. But I just think this is going to be really a tough game after the back-to-back, coming back from Cleveland. But you never know. I mean, the Wizards definitely need this game to make any sort of run. I just don't see it with all the games that they're playing, and they're just not playing very well. But it should be a decent game. Just very tough.
Yeah. All right, Arun, break down the final game for us.
Yeah, I'll break down the Cavaliers game. The last time the Wizards played the Cavaliers, they got to overtime. They made like the last, like I think they were down like 8 to 10 points with like 2 or 3 minutes to go. So they pulled, like normally the Wizards have given up huge leads. The Wizards have actually given up the most 15-point lead losses this season. But if they're going to make the playoffs, this is the kind of team that they're going to play, and they're probably going to play even better teams if they actually win the play-in tournament. They'll probably play the Celtics or the Bucks. So if they're actually going to make a decent run in the playoffs, which is playoffs, like Jim Mora's quotation, but they're going to have to beat like a team like the Cavaliers, who are the number 4 seed. Otherwise, what's the point of even getting in the play-in tournament? Like if they can't beat a playoff caliber team like Cleveland, because they're going to be playing potential conference or NBA Finals contenders like the Milwaukee Bucks or Boston Celtics or Philadelphia 76ers, who they're just blown out by. So we'll see what the Wizards have in store in the road game in Cleveland.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, I'm going to stop the screen share there for just a second. And then we'll come back to it. I appreciate you guys breaking it down. Champ, I'm going to switch the graphic for you real quickly. If you'd like to try to turn your camera just for your No Spots segment, you can. And let people know what's happening in the No Spots podcast this week.
All right. So this week on No Spots, we have, of course, the New Japan Cup recap coming up on Thursday, where we will be recapping the second round matches that are taking place this week. Some very interesting results and things like that. And then we'll look ahead to the quarterfinals, semifinals, and finals, which are all taking place next week. And then on Saturday, myself and Sith will be talking about everything that's happened this week in wrestling. And we will have a little countdown that I won't reveal right now, but we will reveal it upcoming on Saturday. But just as a little bit of a spoiler, it's a list of something that's not good. So that's all I'll say about it. But make sure you check us out on twitch.tv/TrueNoSpotsPod, and make sure you check us out by going to SportsOTHP.com, click the partners button, and make sure you check out our audio podcast, and make sure you listen to all the episodes in the archives.
Sounds good. All right. Well, Ryan, if you want to click the link, I've sent it to you in Discord for you to join the March Madness. That would we could get you started. But Champ, I appreciate you as always being a part of the team, and I'm excited to have you as part of the show next week to celebrate 7 years. And we'll talk to you throughout the week.
Okigenyo. Sayonara.
All right. I appreciate that. And all right, let me switch graphics again here. And we'll bring in Ryan whenever he is ready. I'm going to also send him a quick little message on here just to make sure that he sees it there as well.